the easiest way is get in your car and start driving around, listen for a chainsaw. That's your first clue. But what I've really found is a really good source is the guys that are clearing the power lines, you know, for the public service or the telephone lines. If you can find one of those guys and get in contact with him, give him your name or a sample of your bowl or something like that. Particularly a sample to him for one of your bowls makes you a good customer, because the first time he runs across some wood that you have told him that you want, well, he's going to give you a call. So you're kind of bribing the guy. Anyway, one of the things what I'm going to do is just going to show you a couple of different spots on a tree where we're going to find different kinds of grain. We're going to have some feather crotch in here, and there's some. In this part of the tree right here, you'll find that that's some tension wood or compression wood, and maybe we'll talk about a bowl here or a burl down here at the bottom. If you find a crotch figure like this, it's going to look like this. To get something out of this, how do you do that? How do you get a bowl out of that? So you want to end up with something as dramatic as that as a crotch figure. How do you get that out of this? Obviously, this is a little smaller than a whole-sized tree. But what you can do, if you cut this like this, so now it exposes the crotch figure. And that red circle here shows you where you can get something similar to this. In this case, it was real thin. But in this case, I can get a bowl right out of this, just like that. So what I've done is I've taken that crotch figure, and now I've got a bowl blank. Now you understand exactly where that bowl blank came from. So if you're going to turn a bowl out of this, you want a natural edge bowl, you put your faceplate on this side, chuck it up, you got a natural edge right here. If you don't want the natural edge and you want a finished edge, put the chuck on this side, your faceplate on this side, and turn it so you carve it out in there. So does that make it clear on where you're getting that? If I can get this back together now. But now you understand where you want to get into that crotch there to get the best grain. The best grain is going to be somewhere around in here, and that's at the bottom portion of that crotch figure. I should touch on one other thing first, and I'll pass these around. When you're doing chainsaw work, one of the most obvious things that you don't want to run into is nails and such. I run into nails, I run into barbed wire, horseshoes, and in the case of a box elder tree, a 20-foot piece of log chain. So you never know what you're going to find on the inside. This little block of wood here illustrates that. If you fold that out, you'll find there's a couple of bullets in there. These happen to be musket balls. And I cut right through them, didn't know they were there. Surprised as I'll get out when it showed up there. And I'll pass this around, you can take a look at that. Anybody got an idea what that is? No? Fair guess, though. What if I told you it was a curly maple? Nobody? Come on. Maple sugar tap. This one has actually been in the tree long enough that it's about 10 years in that's grown completely over it. And I'll show you that too. I've got one other item here. This is a walnut tree, and I ran into this. I saw this, an insulator for electric fence. I saw it on the outside of the tree before I started cutting it. So I tried to incorporate that insulator into a bowl. It's not very artistic, however, it is there. So we'll pass these around. You can take a look at them. So those are the things you don't want to run into. The bullets, that doesn't hurt anything. But that maple sugar tap got half of my chainsaw blade before. Big shower of sparks, and so I had to quit for there. Why don't you take this? That's a feather crotch. Put this aside. Now we're going to take, obviously that's a cross section of the log. If you take a bowl out of the top here and a bowl out of the bottom, you're going to get two different grain figures. This is being the top piece, and as you can see, the grain is going like this. That's the grain here, going like that. So you got this bowl. This bowl is actually back in here, but you can see by cutting it in that thing, you've got a grain figure that's going up and down. On the inside of the bowl, you get an oval shape. This is just going to give you a different type of grain figure. If you take that same bowl shape and you do it below, at the bottom part of this, you will get a different grain figure, and that grain figure is going to go like this, as it is here. So just by positioning your bowl blank out of the tree, you're going to get different grain figures and different grain patterns. Make sense? Yeah. So, depending on where you position that bowl, you're going to get some interesting grains. You can pass these around and maybe understand these too. These are a little wet because I just turned them the other day. Now, that's cross grain. In other words, the grain is going this way. What happens if we do end grain? We can do end grain, and we'll do one right out of the center of the log, like this, and you'll get this. It looks like a target. Concentric rings. The outside's got an unusual figure, and I selected pine, this is all pine, because of the difference in the wide grain spacing, so you can get a different idea. But you see the outside looks completely different. Kind of has some eyes, and it's just like a target on the inside.
Do you have to do anything about this?
I don't worry about it.
Do you have a lot of sap, or is it difficult wood to work with?
Turns like butter. It's soft, and there's no sawdust. It's all wet. You know, bring your sponge. You're going to need face cloth to keep you can get a little wet, or you can stand on the side. Now, instead of taking the bowl right out of the middle, let's take it off to the side. This changes the whole grain figure. If you look at this bowl, the grain is going like this. So is this bowl. The grain is going just like this. So just by positioning the bowl in a different part of the log, you'll get a different figure. Now at the outside, it's just straight up and down grain. When you cut it out of the center, you get concentric rings looking like a target. Continuing on. On your end grain figure, one of the things that becomes really interesting, if you can get, here's a log, if you can capture these limbs that come out of the tree, and that's the whole tree, down at the bottom, you'll get kind of a star-shaped pattern where these join the bottom. So what you want to do is you want to select the log that the bottom of the inside lines up with these limbs that are coming out of the tree, and it'll give you that figure. And here's another example of the same deal. Now this is end grain. This is right with the log. So you get the concentric, and this I turned right out of the center. Make sense? It's quite dramatic. And if you do this right, and after this dries, and this is wet, some of the difficulties in pine, because there's so much resin in the pine, there's sometimes you have a hard time finishing it. You put, like shellac or even lacquer, the shellac will never dry because there's too much resin in it. at the tail end of this thing, so we've got some crotch grain figure here, and we showed you how to get that out of the, like that. Now granted, this is small, so I was able to pull a bowl blank right out of this by putting it on, actually put it on the bandsaw and just cut a circle. When you get a big log, and this thing happens to be this big around, you're not going to be able to put it on your bandsaw. It's not going to cut. But by making a series of cuts with your chainsaw, you're going to get it approximately round. Good enough so you can get it on the lathe and get it rounded up. But for the purpose of illustration, I think that brings you a good idea of what's going on. Burls. They're fun. Might be found down here on the edge of the tree, might be up here, might be around the tree. There's a couple different ways to do the burls. One, you can take the burl, here's the tree. This is the outside, this is the inside, faceplate on this side. And what you do is you capture all those irregularities that are on the outside of the burl. You can do it that way, or there's the outside of the burl. This is the inside of the tree. Mount your faceplate down here instead of mounting it here. See the difference? Faceplate's here. Now you carve it nice and round in here, but it's a smooth edge. The rough edge of the outside of the tree is on the other side. Thought you'd never ask. If you take drywall screws and you've got a faceplate that might be this big around, you can put it on here and put a drywall screw down here. Now to level that faceplate, put some washers between the faceplate and here, and you can level that up. Put it down flat, but where there's a spot here, you need some washers so you can get it fairly square to the piece. You don't want it sitting in here like this or like that. You want to get it pretty close to that. And when you do that, it'll work just fine. Just tighten the screws down and turn it. So it's going to be some screws there with a bunch of washers on. But so what? The bowl doesn't know that. You could care less. So you can turn something like that. It's very irregular and still use your faceplate.
What do you do to the holes after you take the screws out? Leave them?
They're still there.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you just have a log and just the positioning of where you cut the blank out of is going to give you different grain patterns. And it can be really dramatic. Particularly when you cut it right here in the center and you have a log and it ends up, and you can see in the bottom of that one, it's just really interesting. I don't know how functional something like this is, but some of these other bowls are quite functional. This will make a good wastebasket, I think. If you want to know more about how to position wood in the log, I can't say enough about this book here, Turning Green Wood. It has just excellent illustrations of where to get different grain patterns in the wood, where they come from in the tree, so when you get a log, you know how to utilize the log and get the maximum amount of nice figure. Some of it's so dramatic. That one feather crotch there is just, it's just terrific. And I've had it for a number of years. That's one of those pieces that end up on the kitchen shelf and they never leave. Any questions? Told you it was going to be short.
This video was made possible by a grant from the Future Girl Foundation.
This video was made possible by thousands of private donations from members and viewers like you. Please visit thegeekgroup.org for more information on how you can donate and become a part of our dreams of Avalon.